Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good.
So we had like a little introduction that we wanted to do first, kind of saying what exactly we do, and then we were going to introduce ourselves. So we're a group of Canton High students who want to provide Canton kids opportunities to engage in STEAM, and we've been making some educational videos and articles, and now these interviews for elementary school students to explore, and we're hoping to increase an interest in STEAM.
Great, that's awesome. I'm glad you all are doing this project. It seems like really important, especially now with COVID.
What is your profession and what career field are you in?
Yeah, so I am currently working in tobacco control research. Previously, I was doing more food systems work. Both of those are fields within public health, essentially. So looking at ways to improve the health of the population as a whole, as opposed to, doctors who might look at an individual patient. So we're looking at more things like how do we reduce tobacco use in order to avoid the many diseases that come along with that. But throughout school, I also did a lot of studying in environmental science and sustainability, as well as biology. So I kind of like to be in fields that like apply to several of those topics. So yeah, that's kind of my end goal. But right now I'm in tobacco control research.
Awesome. And now we have Anika's question.
For our next question, could you describe your field and if they connect?
Sure, yeah. So right now I'm in tobacco control research again, which is like within public health. So that really connects a lot with looking at more food systems issues, because both really look at ways in which we can affect change on like a societal level in order to improve population health. So for example, both in food systems and in tobacco control, there's a huge system looking at the industry, whether it be the tobacco industry or the food industry, and how they advertise unhealthy products to people and encourage them to use those products, whether it be, again, like cigarettes or potato chips. So there's a lot of parallels between those fields. And then environmental sustainability is also an interest of mine. I studied it a lot in school. It doesn't have a lot of applicability to tobacco control, but it is very related to food systems. My previous position, I worked at a small nonprofit in Baltimore City, and we looked at how do we basically improve the power of a community to produce their own food and ensure that they can feed themselves, so that they aren't relying on external people who may or may not provide what they need. But within that, there's a lot of emphasis on sustainable agriculture techniques, and ways in which we can grow food while benefiting the environment rather than harming it. So there's a lot of overlap. And then biology plays into all of that as well, because, with everything, there's a biological effect it can have on your body, and it's good to be able to understand how that happens. So
Yeah, I love what you said about the intersectionality between issues and how a lot of things overlap, even though like we may not see all the connections just point blank.
So what most interests you about biology and environmental sustainability and public health and that?
yeah, I think a big part of it is just the applicability to everyday life. I mean, with environmental sustainability, there's choices you make every day that affect that and that play into that. Things like turning off your lights and using reusable water bottles and just everything. Like there's so many things you can do to play a role in that. And I just think that's really interesting. And I think that, like, of course, it's a really, really important issue right now with climate change and all of the issues that we're going to run into. And I think sort of the intersectionality between those three is what's really interesting to me, just because I have experience with all of those fields, and sort of looking at how how climate change, how issues with like environmental sustainability are long-term going to impact population health, as things like, crop yields fall because of the like instability in our climate throughout like agricultural areas. And how are people going to feed themselves when we can't grow the things we used to grow because this area gets way more rain than it used to, or it's way hotter than it used to, or less rain, which is almost worse, and things like that. And then the biology kind of plays into all of that again, like, genetic modification of crops in order to potentially increase yield in places where we might otherwise not be getting enough to feed people. And I just, I just think it's all very applicable to life. And I think it's like all important ways that we need to, like important things we need to think about in order to improve people's lives, basically.
Was there anything in your childhood that inspired you to join the field, or did you kind of decide that once you got to college?
I guess a mixture. I was always kind of interested in like zoology, and like I think when I was really little, I wanted to be like a veterinarian at some point. So I was always interested in that sort of area. It definitely evolved over time, and when I got to college, I actually started as a molecular and cellular biology major, which is like very heavy into the cellular level of biology. So more like, most people who pursue that major end up doing either lab research in biology or become doctors. And I didn't really want to do either of those things. I was more interested in biology at like a larger scale, almost, I guess, more ecology than biology. And so during my time at Hopkins, I decided to switch that and I switched to biology major, which is a little less intensive than the molecular and cellular biology major. And then I added the public health because I had become really involved in a service organization in college, and I saw firsthand a lot of these issues that public health attempts to address, things like opioid overdoses, food insecurity, environmental sustainability issues, just all like crime, just all these things that I thought were really interesting and that really affect people's lives and that present a good pathway for affecting people's lives. And so that's kind of why I started working more in public health. And then I also added in a minor in environmental sustainability because I find that really interesting and would like to pursue that more.
So you mentioned how you switch around your fields to find what passion you found you like interested you best. So to be a person in your field, were there any specific things you did, or were there any classes in high school or college that really stood out to you?
Yeah, I think what I've found after graduating college is that a lot of people don't end up exactly in the field they thought they were going to, or it doesn't exactly line up with the classes they took necessarily. I did take in college a lot of classes in public health. So classes like looking at how the environment affects our health and Medicare and Medicaid work and how that impacts people's health. But I also took a lot of classes in environmental sustainability and things like that, and then a lot of classes in biology, as I mentioned. So I guess I think that like if you know what you want to do in college, great, like do that and take as many classes as you can that interest you. If you don't, it'll be okay too. You'll figure it out. You can get a master's, you can take some classes, you can switch fields. It's not the end of the world. But I do, the earlier you figure it out, that's awesome. In high school, I didn't. You guys go to Ken High. There's not like an endless amount of options the way there is in college. Like in college, you can pick so many different things. In high school, you have to take your math and your English. And I I did take like the most advanced math classes in high school, and I took AP statistics, which has come in handy because I do some data analysis for my work now. So statistics is helpful, but yeah.
So for our next question, we were wondering if there were some qualities that many people in your field have.
Yeah, I remember looking at this question and being like, I don't think so. I think like at the end of the day, anyone can really decide to do whatever they want, you know? You don't necessarily have to be a certain type of person in order to pursue a field, as long as you find it interesting, like do what you want to do, I guess. Yeah, I don't think there is like a certain personality that fits with the field or a certain character trait. I think just people who are interested in it, I guess, people who are passionate about it, and I think that's what's important.
How does being in your field affect the rest of your life?
So it definitely does. I think that like it's opened my eyes to a lot of things that maybe I otherwise wouldn't think about much or wouldn't care much about. But with a field like public health, you're constantly looking at all of these, you know, kind of sad things that occur in everyday life that really like negatively impact people. And so it definitely gives you maybe a little bit of a jaded view of some things because you're thinking, you know, constantly about all these negative things in the world, you know, like the tobacco use epidemic, and how much like corporate industry played a role in that, and how we still allow people to market a product we know is not safe to people. Like, we know cigarettes cause cancer and all these other horrible diseases. Why are we allowed to market them? And it gets a little like sometimes you're like, wow, this is sad, but it also like helps you become more aware, I guess, and a little less ignorant to all the things that go on in society that I think a lot of people just don't pay attention to because it's not necessarily relevant. Like with environmental sustainability work, like now I'm very conscious of every decision I make, how that impacts the environment. I turn off all my lights all the time, only on if I'm in the room. If it's light out, there are no lights on. I just got solar panels, so all my electricity is coming from solar power anyways, and I still turn off my lights all the time. Reusable water bottles. I'm vegan. I don't eat animal products because they're really terrible for the environment as well. So it's definitely just made me more aware of how my choices affect other people.
Yeah, I think I love what you said about how it sometimes gives you a negative view on life, but at the same time, in the long run, it really benefits you because you have a greater understanding of the world and you know ways and like you can be motivated on how you yourself can make an impact on the rest of the world.
Yeah, exactly. That was very eloquent.
So another question that we have for you is, what would you say to others who want to pursue this field? Because I feel like environmental science and public health is kind of up and coming, I guess. I don't know. That could be just me, but so what would you say to people?
I would definitely encourage it. I enjoy the field a lot. I think it's like one of the easier fields to like make an impact on other people's lives. Yeah, that's true. So that's why I wanted to pursue it in a lot of ways. I've always, tried to do things that are good for other people. And so I went with health and environmental sustainability, and yeah, I would encourage other people to do so if they are interested. I do think that it's an up and coming field, like you said, especially environmental sustainability, but also public health, because I think people are starting to open their eyes a little to all the issues that we're having and all the things we need to really change about our society in order for people to be healthier and for people to have a higher quality of living as well. And I think that even if it's not up and coming and you like it, I would still encourage you to do it. It's I try not to make decisions too based in money or what's gonna make me famous or super high level or anything like that. I try to just do what interests me and what I'm passionate about. And if that's what you're passionate about, I would encourage people to go into that.
For another follow-up question, we have, how has your field/profession helped you grow as a person?
Yeah, definitely it has. It's, again, kind of what I said before. It's really made me more aware of some of the things that happen on a day-to-day basis, that you may be coming from, a town like Canton, where, there's not that much crime going on. There's not a lot of like, it's a pretty nice town. So coming from somewhere like that, it definitely opens your eyes to things that you maybe didn't see before. Things like how people really can struggle in day-to-day life with all these like compounding factors that make life really difficult. You're sick, and so you can't necessarily go to work every day, but you have tons of medical bills, and how these issues all like compound on themselves to create situations that really are just like impossible to get out of and impossible to change. And public health has definitely shown me that, but it's also shown me that you can fix things, even if it takes a lot of time, even if it's really hard and takes a lot of convincing other people. It's opened my eyes to how important policy change can be, because you can impact so many people at once if you can actually get a policy through, potentially. And on the environmental sustainability side, it's just, I don't know, open my eyes is the right word, but like confirmed what I thought about how dire our situation is in that regard. And so that's been interesting.
I think what you said about how like policy change is just so important really speaks truth to how educating and advocating for things you really believe in is so great, and how even though it's just like our small community, it can have a really big impact on people who may want to pursue careers in the future, or will want to have greater interest in it, in like a project or something you do, like environmental science.
Yeah, it's definitely incredibly important. And just, thinking about policy, like if you think about some of the most major changes that have happened over time, policies played a big role in that we like feel a certain way and that we are going to take action on this topic, and we like are going to move forward with it. And also just actually changing lives. Things like the school lunch program that provides like free and reduced lunch to people who can't afford it otherwise, feeds so many children every day, like so many. And that's a policy that implemented that program. And so things like that can be really impactful for people.
If someone wanted to go into the same field and work a job like you, what characteristics do you think would be helpful to possess?
What characteristics? I think with working, of course, but I also like to advocate for good work-life balance. So, work hard, but also take time for yourself, I would say. You can get burnt out pretty quickly. I'll say going to Hopkins for 4 years maybe burnt me out a little. And so I'm glad to now like be in a work environment where I can set my limit and be like, okay, I'm leaving at 4 p.m. after my workday, and I'm taking some time for myself. But yeah, working hard is always helpful. But I don't know, I think at the end of the day, it's really just caring about the topic and wanting to be in it so that you want to learn about it and work on it. I think like that's one of the most important things, because then you'll find yourself like in your free time learning about these things, and you can develop like a really strong base of knowledge in these areas, without even really feeling like you're doing work in some ways. So I think if you really enjoy a topic, that's always a huge benefit.
So another question I just thought of now, How has public health affected your views on COVID this year? And is there anything surrounding COVID that you've learned or that you've applied to this year?
Yeah, so being in public health, it's kind of a weird time because you're kind of like, for one, public health people and other scientists have been saying for a long time that a pandemic like this is very possible. It's something that like we talked about in classes I took, and like I took a whole class in viruses actually, and a whole nother one in vaccinations. So, you know, it was kind of predictable that it was going to happen eventually. The fact of the matter is the where society is with like globalization and people traveling all throughout the world in crowded environments. You know, we've set ourselves up for things like this to happen, for pandemics to occur. Um, and so I think it's kind of a strange time because in one sense, it's like, you know, we kind of knew this was happening, we should have been more prepared, and it's almost a little frustrating from like a public health perspective because basically a lot of public health is you trying to be like, these are really important issues, like we need to focus on these, and other people kind of brushing you off. um but on the other hand, of course, it's like this huge tragedy and it's really terrible that this happened, and you know, how can we prevent this in the future is really the big question. Sorry, this is my cat. um, so, you know, I also think it's funny because I get asked a lot about COVID, and quite honestly, I'm a tobacco control researcher. I know about viruses and I know about vaccination because I come from a biology background. I have a fairly solid um, background in that. But at the end of the day, I don't stay up to date on all the new COVID things. But I do think because of, you know, the education I received in biology and public health, I do have like a good background to say like basic level things about it, like you should get the vaccination. I know the vaccination seems to have some side effects, but they're not serious. And at the end of the day, that's better than getting COVID. The risk of serious reactions is lower for the vaccination than for COVID. So I think that you know, it's definitely provided me with sort of like context of, you know, this is serious. I know that it's serious because I've learned all about these viruses and how terrible they can be, and I take it seriously because of that, I guess.
So we just had one final question that we think really applies to a lot of people, and a lot of people will be interested in learning from your perspective. And that is, what impact has STEAM had on you specifically?
Yeah. Um I think that it's interesting that I think when I was in high school, STEAM was just becoming a big part of the curriculum. So I think for me, um, broadly speaking, more like science, technology, engineering, arts, math. I've always been really interested in science and math. That's always been like an area that I saw myself going into. I was never much of an artist on English, and I loved in science all throughout high school, all throughout middle elementary school, and in college. um, so I think definitely like STEAM has given me like a pathway in life that I want to go down and that I'm interested in. And I wish that it was more of a thing, I guess, when I was in high school so that I could have hopefully taken even more classes and learned more about it. I took like, you know, all the science classes. So going to college and being able to take really intensive like science and math courses was great. And it was really interesting, and it got to like I got to learn a lot, and it was great. And I think that like STEAM is a really practical field to go in, as much as you know, I don't encourage people to do that, but it's a profitable field in many ways, not so much public health, quite honestly, but if you were more interested in engineering or math or computer science, things like that, of course, are very profitable. But I also think that like it's a really interesting way to just study like how life works, like how everything in your life works. You know, we flip on like a light every day. How does that happen? Um, we eat food every day. How does that get digested in our bodies? And all of those little like life mysteries that a lot of people couldn't give you an answer to. And it's kind of cool to be the person in the room that can be like, oh, I know how that happens. I learned about that and I study that. So that part can be kind of fun.
So I think I speak for everyone when we say we're so glad to speak with you and to get like again your perspective on this and see and listen to just about your thoughts on STEAM and like how it can affect life. So again, thank you for joining us today. And I think if that's it, we're all set.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for inviting me. I was really happy to speak with you as well. I'm always happy to encourage others to pursue fields they're interested in.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.